5,000 ships. One morning, one tide. That was the smallest coordination problem in this film. 1,900 miles east, 2.5 million men were about to move at once. Some of these operations were the largest of their kind ever attempted. One of them never existed at all. 6 missions, 6 different kinds of impossible. 1944. Every invasion in history had one thing this one did not. Somewhere to land that the enemy was not already waiting for. The Atlantic Wall was never a wall. It was a belt of strongpoints, thickest wherever a port might be taken. Rommel had spent the spring turning the beaches themselves into the obstacle. So the question that mattered was never whether the Allies would come, it was where. 5 beaches, 50 miles of Normandy coast, and one tide that would serve. The assault would go in on 5 sectors, west to east, in a single morning. Every port along the English south coast had been filling for months. The problem was never courage or numbers. It was arithmetic and tide tables. The flanks went in first, by air, hours before the sea moved. 3 divisions, 2 American, 1 British. They jumped in darkness into country nobody could see. The drops scattered badly. Men came down miles from their zones. They formed up with whoever they found and held the flanks anyway. That is the part worth remembering about the 6th of June. Then the sea, nearly 7,000 vessels, converging in the dark. Battleships, destroyers, transports, and the flat-bottomed craft that would actually touch the sand. The men aboard had been briefed on a beach most of them had only ever seen as a photograph. On 4 of the 5, it went roughly as drawn. On the 5th, it did not. At Omaha, the bombardment had missed, and the current pushed the assault sideways. The bluffs above the beach were still held, and for most of the morning, the plan simply stopped applying. They went up those bluffs in small groups, without the armor that was supposed to be there. By nightfall, the beachhead was joined, and the wall had a hole in it, and the strongest armored reserve in France had not moved all day, because the Germans were still waiting somewhere else for an army that did not exist. The 1st United States Army Group had a commander, a headquarters, a shoulder patch, and on paper, 11 divisions. It had none of them, not one man, not one tank. It was radio traffic, units that only ever talked and were meant to be overheard. The short crossing, the direct road to Germany, it worked. The armored reserve stayed in the Pas-de-Calais for 7 weeks, waiting for an invasion that never came. In June 1944, the German army held a front across Belarusia that had not moved for most of a year. Against Belarusia, the Germans had 495 tanks, facing them about 4,000. It did not attack along the whole front. It broke it in a small number of places. The flanks went first. The center held its ground longest, and that is what destroyed it. Vitebsk, Bobruisk, then Minsk, each ring closed behind an army that was still fighting forwards. 28 of Army Group Center's 38 divisions were destroyed. In 2 months, the front moved west by up to 400 miles. The most important target in Europe sat 1,200 miles from the nearest airfield the Allies had. 1,200 miles out, 1,200 back. No fighter could go that far, so nothing would be escorting them. The crews were briefed on Ploiesti, Romanian oil. 1/3 of everything Germany burned came through it. They chose the option nobody had seriously attempted with heavy bombers. Come in underneath. Bombs fused by hand on a strip in the Libyan desert. 50 feet, under the radar and under the minimum elevation of the guns. 177 B-24s got off the ground on the 1st of August. 5 bomb groups and 5 hours over open water. Across the Mediterranean, the mountains of Greece, and the Danube plain. The whole plan depended on nobody seeing them coming. What undid the operation was not the flak, it was a turn. The lead turned south too early, toward Bucharest and its defenses. The correct checkpoint was Florești. They had followed the wrong railway out of Târgoviște. By the time they corrected, the raid had come apart into pieces. They bombed anyway, at rooftop height, into a target that was wide awake. 53 aircraft did not come back. Ploiesti was hit, repaired, and running again within weeks. 5 medals of honor were awarded for that single morning. It remains one of the costliest raids the American Air Forces ever flew. Distance was the enemy. Distance and one wrong turn. By March 1945, one thing still stood between the Allied armies and the inside of Germany: a river. On the far bank was high wooded ground, and on it the German artillery that could see every boat that tried to cross. So they decided to land on top of it. Gliders ranked wingtip to wingtip. 1,350 of them, British and American. At Arnhem, they had landed a safe distance from the objective and paid for it. This time, everything would go at once. One lift, in daylight, after the ground attack, not before it. 16,500 men into an area about 8 miles across, the largest single-lift airborne operation ever mounted. The stream took 2.5 hours to pass a single point. Gliders under tow in clear March daylight. Hooked up and waiting for the light. They came down inside the German gun positions. Not a safe distance from them, on top of them, while the guns were still being served. One American regiment came down on the wrong zone entirely and fought where it landed. Gliders came in hard across open fields under fire and unloaded where they stopped. By that evening, the airborne and the men who had crossed the river were one force. The last one is not a front or a distance. It is an ocean. On the 20th of October, American troops landed on Leyte. The Japanese Navy had one answer left: send almost everything still afloat at that gulf at once and accept whatever it cost. Not down one road. The Philippines are not one road. 2 forces started from Borneo and took different routes to the same gulf. A third came down from the north. It was not trying to reach Leyte at all. It was there to be seen and to pull the American carriers away. In the Sibuyan Sea, American aircraft found the center force and sank the Musashi. Halsey took the carriers north after the decoy, and the strait he had been guarding emptied behind him. By the following morning, there were 4 separate battles. Across 300 miles of ocean, and no commander could see more than one. In Surigao Strait, the last time battleships ever fought battleships The Southern force was destroyed almost to the last ship. And off Samar, 6 escort carriers and their destroyers found battleships in front of them. They attacked anyway, destroyers against battleships. After 2.5 hours, the Japanese commander turned around and went back. 6 operations. They are all called the biggest of something. And the reason they can all be the biggest is that they are not the same measurement. Bagration was a geographic one, a front 450 miles long that stopped existing. Tidal wave was a distance. VARSITY was a compression. LEYTE GULF was an ocean with 4 battles in it. And FORTITUDE was the largest of all of them by 1 measurement, and it consisted of nothing.